This is letter 2 from Decimus Fabius, an ambassador of Roman Empire to the Frankish kingdom. I thank you for the instructions I received from Rome recently. I'll try to act according to your wishes and take as many notes about the military capabilities of Franks as possible. I share your concern about them turning on us at some point, like rabid dogs turning on their master. And I pray wisdom for the emperor and his generals so that they would fortify the northeastern border of the empire so that the Franks cannot cause too much damage if they someday decide to turn on us. But that's enough about it for now. I think it's time for me to focus on the main thing about reporting what the Franks do under the leadership of ambitious Claudio. And I have to note for my great delight that Captain Felix with his great host has been positioned near vicinity of Augusta Treverorum, and hopefully that will deter any enemy possible plans that the enemies might have of attacking across the river there. Claudio decided to march his host to rebel territory. At least for now he left Burgundy alone. There he glimpsed Marcus the Gambler, a Roman general with his great host, and at least I saw some doubt in Claudio's eyes, and I hope that the host is enough to deter any foolhardy attacks that the ambitious Frankish leader might have.
A most generous proposal.
Greetings. Our thanks.
It's encouraging that Claudio decided to make a trade agreement with the Eastern Roman Empire, but what is this? I cannot understand why we want to cancel the alliance with the Franks. This will surely insult Claudio and mean that at some point we need to fight against him. That was a foolhardy mistake. If you have any influence in the imperial court, please try to advise the emperor that he must cancel this grave mistake. I'm afraid we will pay a hefty price soon, because Claudio ordered already his troops to be moved to near vicinity of Augusta Treverorum. He said it's a defensive measure as his reliable allies are not so reliable after all. So I'm worried that in his ambition he might begin to eye Roman cities as further targets to satisfy his ambition. Marcus the Gambler is besieging Campus Frisi. And Claudio is moving nearby. I think he could have been persuaded to help in the siege if we had retained the friendly relations with them. But I have to repeat my fears that this bodes ill for the Empire. For example, our closest settlement Augusta Vindelicorum and also Augusta Treverorum are poorly defended, excepting for armies commanded by Captain Silvanus and Captain Felix. And make no mistake, the Franks are well informed about the armies the Romans are fielding near them. They have some spies in the near vicinity that are constantly gathering information. And also Colonia Agrippina is completely relying on Marcus the Gambler as a defender. And I pray that Marcus won't gamble the city away in some foolhardy attempt, for example against the Franks. It's my sad duty to inform you that the Franks have become so bold that they have moved into the Roman territory, and Claudio is hiring every available mercenary that he can. He has set his position in a bridge between Campus Frisi and Colonia Agrippina, and the way he eyes to the south from his current position, I'm almost certain that Colonia Agrippina will soon be under attack by that beast. I dearly hope and pray that my message won't be intercepted, because that might spell my doom here as well. Claudio doesn't take traitors or friends of the enemies lightly. Additionally, there is a new son from Claudio, Rodulf, and he has been sent to reinforce Vicus Alemanni, which is currently training more troops, and I'm afraid he will begin eyeing Augusta Vindelicorum rather greedily. He is a son of a great conqueror, and that might mean that he wants to prove himself as well. Fortunately, it seems that either the Lombardy or Burgundy are moving against the Franks. And what is this? The foolhardy captain near Vicus Franki decided to declare war on us, and because of this, Claudio decided to imprison me. I'm no longer an ambassador, I'm a prisoner, and that clearly diminishes my abilities to serve the Emperor here. I'm not certain if Captain Felix is a rogue, trying to cause us damage here, but the situation is perilous indeed. At the moment, Claudio is wondering whether to attack Colonia Agrippina because of its smaller garrison and better defenses than Campus Frisi, which is under command of Marcus the Gambler. He has sent his spies to Colonia Agrippina, and I pray that the spy does not succeed in opening the gates to the settlement, which is not the case. But Colonia Agrippina is besieged and in a dire threat from the Franks. And if the reports I have heard are correct, Rodulf is actually bringing in troops from the Vicus Alemanni to relieve Vicus Franki, and if Captain Felix gets beaten, there is nothing between an angry Frankish host and Augusta Treverorum. Unfortunately, our army comprises only of light troops. None of our famous legionaries are bolstering it. It's only those border troops only. Limitane, supported by light cavalry. Some Foderati cavalry at that, and some archers. And I fear that they will break under the Frankish onslaught. I hope that my prayers are being heard, so that we don't lose that host in this blizzard, because it will certainly spell doom for nearby provinces. Claudio is a man that does not forget slights easily. He will try to exact revenge to the best of his ability. Fortunately, we do have the greater numbers in here. However, the Roman host is commanded by a captain, not a general, and that most certainly will hamper its effectiveness. And the miserable captain has ordered his troops to come to the walls, so that the Frankish archers have clear line of fire in an elevated position. So the best troops, the most ferocious Germans that the host has, are constantly under fire. I'm so shocked that I'm blubbering in this letter. The bravest Roman soldiers are under constant missile fire, and they are running here and there. Apparently Captain Felix doesn't know at all what he is doing, while the Franks are amassing their host to face them. Tancred, the heir to Claudio, is currently marching out of the city, ready to take the field against the Roman host. The casualties are starting to mount on the Roman side. However, the Franks are still secure in front of their walls and on the walls, and they have absolutely no worries in this kind of situation. They can easily exchange arrows from this position until they have weakened the Roman ranks too much for them to survive against the direct onslaught. Captain Felix has ordered his archers forward to return fire, but apparently the archers don't know what to do. Limitane have been brought forward. They are preparing their pila, but they are targeting only the peasants that are running away from under that missile hail. And Captain Felix ordered a foolhardy attack by peasants and some Limitane, and that will most certainly end in disaster, as those troops are not meant to be fighting in such a close proximity. So the peasants have been already routed, and so are the Limitane. That's one unit of Limitane. Why did he order only one unit to attack? I don't know. But the archers are starting to rout as well. Foderati infantry is moving to engage, but it's not supported by anything almost. The enemies are gathering their cavalry as a fist, and now they are moving against our host. Or at least it seems so. Arrows are flying constantly, and the Romans are forced to pull back. The enemy formations are standing stalwart in the blizzard, and it seems those Foderatis and Limitane haven't had enough. They are making another charge. Let's hope it won't prove as useless as the first one. Once again, they are in the range of enemy archers. They are taking casualties. It could be worse, but also it could be better. They are already wavering, and they will break. Both of those units will break. And as they turn their backs to run, they will take some new extra casualties. Captain Felix seems to be uncertain about what to do. He has ordered another Foderati infantry to take the place of the one fleeing, and he has once again ordered the peasants forward. It's good that the peasants might soak up some arrow damage, but losing that Foderati infantry most likely will prove crucial for this battle. Especially if the Franks move to attack. And the Foderati infantry is broken. The peasants are running them down, and they are suffering more casualties. The Romans do have one advantage in the battle though, and that's the number of their cavalry. If their cavalry can make a decent enough charge, I think the Franks could be routed. However, once again... Okay, this time Captain Felix made a correct call. He ordered his archers forward to engage only the enemy archers and units. However, Tancred shows that it's time for him to put his troops into the offensive, and the whole Frankish host is moving towards the Roman. The contrast to the tactics Felix is employing is staggering. The cavalry is readying a flanking maneuver, while our troops are somewhat disoriented what to do. And there is a fierce cavalry battle on the right flank of our host. And it seems we are standing strong. Tancred has clearly miscalculated his troops' morale, and the Roman cavalry is beginning to drive the Franks off. Now only archers remain, and of course in the right flank there is a fierce cavalry battle continuing, with Tancred himself leading. I hope that he will fall, so that could break the backbone of the Roman army. However, at the moment it seems that the Roman cavalry is the one breaking, and Tancred and his cavalry have clear route to missile units that have no defense against such an fierce cavalry attack. However, Captain Felix is joining the battle himself. However, he will face a determined opponent. our cavalry is trying to flank. However, they are in the range of towers. And for the Rati infantry manages to engage Tancred from the flank. However, Captain Felix is panicking. He will flee the battle. And that might actually mean he managed to got himself killed. And that might actually mean the end of this battle. There is nothing to stop the Roman advance in our flank or in our rear. And our archers are starting to panic. They have no protection against determined cavalry charges. And as the archers are starting to flee, our infantry will become, the Limitane will become vulnerable to enemy cavalry's charges. However, the Limitane are doing quite a bit better than expected. They are fighting against enemy archers at that. And with some luck, they might be able to break them before the cavalry charges. However, Tancred has noticed the peril his missile units are, and he turned to engage the Limitane, and one of the units have already been broken. There are only one unit of Limitane and some archers left of our host. The Limitane are breaking, and the situation doesn't look good. The Franks clearly suffered heavy casualties in the battle, but at the same time they have managed to wipe out almost the whole Roman host, and I'm afraid that Augusta Treverorum will be left vulnerable because of this foolish attack.
This is a great victory. The cries of dying enemies are sweet music to...
As I said before, that decision to assault Vicus Franki was foolish, and it did end in disaster, even though the troops fought valiantly, but Captain Felix just wasn't up to the task. The Franks are retraining their troops. And that means that during the next summer, Augusta Treverorum will be under serious threat. It might be wise if Captain Basilicus can besiege Vicus Alemanni. That could draw the Franks' attention. However, there is the reinforcing army that suffered no casualties near Vicus Franki. It will probably drive Captain Basiliscus out from the vicinity of Vicus Alemanni. I have also received some worrisome news that the Franks are having diplomatic relations with some barbarian factions. And another foolish decision. I just received a report that a host from Augusta Vindelicorum has moved to besiege Vicus Alemanni. They absolutely have no scouting information as that will leave Augusta Vindelicorum open to attack, especially after that, or if that host gets beaten near Vicus Alemanni. And as I feared, the Frankish host has moved to besiege Augusta Treverorum. There is an army led by Captain Silvanus that could make a difference in the area. However, the question is Will he move to help Colonia Agrippina? Or will he help Augusta Treverorum? And then there is Marcus the Gambler in the north in Campus Frisi. However, he has made no move to help the besieged settlement in the south. So now it's up to Nero Flavius and his troops to defend Colonia Agrippina from Franki's assault. I'm praying to God that the Franks won't get too many victories over us Romans, because that might embolden them even further. And if they see weakness, they will certainly exploit it. Claudio himself is leading this assault once again, and if he can take the city, I don't know if there will be anything to stop him in near future. If he decides to move further into Roman territory, can we muster enough troops to raise a new army to oppose him? Because the troops on the front are tied up in other sorties, and it might be that they cannot move in time to engage Claudio and his host. At the same time, I have gathered some or received some worrisome news that veteran Roman soldiers are actually fighting for gold in Claudio's side. And they are bringing their expertise in warfare to him, and their knowledge about Roman defenses and so on. How can this be allowed? I don't know. But it most certainly is spelling doom for at least Colonia Agrippina. There are only few defenders, and they are being targeted by missile fire as soon as the enemy is able to target them.
The gate is broken. Your warriors have done brave work with the battering ram.
And those brave German allies, or Germanian allies, are being slaughtered. It seems the Roman general here is uncertain about what to do. I can see firsthand how he sent his troops here and there. There are 2 breaches on the walls, the gates have been breached. And this means that the Franks can move in at their leisure.
Now the streets will run with blood.
Nero Flavius has decided to pull his troops back to the city center, or then not. He's clearly indecisive. And that clearly is a wrong approach against the Franks. You must not be indecisive. That will spell doom. The emboldened Franks are moving forwards, and Claudio himself has entered the city. The majority of his army is in the city as well. However, Nero Flavius managed to do a bit of a surprising attack against the Frankish horde, but it remains to be seen how efficient his attack will be. It wasn't efficient at all. He got killed, and now the fate of this settlement has been sealed. Those Germanian forces on their own are absolutely in no position to win the fight. the Golden Band mercenaries emitted a fearsome foe cry that was able to break the last of the defenders, who fled and surrendered for us Franks. One could argue that the positive thing here is that I'm no longer alone as a prisoner, even though I have quite a few privileges as Claudio's personal prisoner. But I spit on the face of those who surrendered to the Franks. Because now Colonia Agrippina has been taken, the enemy will train some more troops, and before we know, they are moving against our heartlands. The spies report that Samarobriva is weakly defended, even though there is a host led by Honorius Scribonianus nearby, so perhaps he will be able to hold Claudia. I pray that's so. However, the situation near Augusta Treverorum and Augusta Vindelicorum is looking rather dire. And Claudio once again has sated his bloodlust by exterminating the population of Colonia Agrippina. As I warned you, the Franks and their leader especially doesn't take betrayal lightly. However, it seems that we have some competent generals left, as Dalmatius Senecio has moved his host to support that of Captain Odoacer in the siege of Vicus Alemanni. And that in turn has forced Rodulf to pull back to Vicus Franki, because it seems the Franks cannot afford to lose that host, or unless they risk losing Vicus Franki altogether. So we might be able to capture Vicus Alemanni, and the situation in southern front might soon look rather promising. However, at the same time, the situation in Augusta Treverorum is perilous. The Franks are continuing the construction of siege equipment, and there is no help in sight. At the same time, Claudio himself is moving against Campus Frisi in the north. He has left only a small garrison to Colonia Agrippina, to keep the settlement under control, and that of course could give an opportunity to Captain Silvanus if he decides to take it, but I'm a bit worried about Marcus the Gambler in Campus Frisi. Can he hold if Claudio moves against him? And we have a most glorious victory. Vicus Alemanni falls under the might of Roman arms, and our troops are moving towards Vicus Franki, and it seems that we are in a position to threaten it. Perhaps that will be enough to force Claudio to return to defend his heartlands. However, Marcus the Gambler has perhaps gambled a bit more than he can afford, as he is besieged in Campus Frisi. Captain Silvanus is a bit too far away to be of service to him, and it seems the Franks have gathered enough forces to assault Augusta Treverorum, and loss of that city might be crucial, even though there are some of our heavy Sarmatian auxiliars to defend the city. But that might not be enough, especially as heavy cavalry is not on its own or cannot do its best in city environment. So that might spell some very heavy difficulties for the army. Or for the empire. The defenders clearly are not well prepared for this kind of a fight. It was Captain Felix with his foolishness that brought the troops that most dearly were needed here out of the city, and thus left it open to enemy attacks. And it seems Caius Flavius' defensive strategy does not entail defending the walls, so it won't be long before the defenders in the gateway and in the towers will be overrun, and the battle will move into the city interior. The Franks do outnumber the Romans at least 3-1, perhaps 4-1, and the situation once again is very difficult. The brave Roman archers managed to inflict some casualties for the Franks, but clearly that wasn't enough. The gateway has been taken, and the Franks are pushing through the walls to capture even more territory inside the city. And the rest of their host is moving in to the city and heading towards the city center, where Caius Flavius is holding his troops. Frankish horde formed up in the streets of the city. They kept their cavalry and those weak-chinned mercenaries as reserve, mostly. The men had run quite long, some of them already had fought on the walls, and they were becoming tired. While General Caius ordered some of his troops to fight, however, the Franks already controlled the towers, which began firing at the unfortunate Foederati infantry that was moving against the Franks. And to make matters worse, the Foederati infantry decided to stop in front of the gateway, and it seems the commander of that unit was befuddled where the enemy was, and thus stood in the arrow fire. I don't just understand how such idiots can be promoted to be a centurion or even commander of a cohort. Because if they decide to stay under fire, that's just foolishness. It will serve them right if they perish in that arrow fire. But it saddens me that their foolishness will serve the interest of the Romans, or rather Rome's enemies. The other Foederati infantry, perhaps too eagerly, moved against the Frankish horde, and they were able to break those weak-chinned mercenaries. I say to you once again, do not rely on those Germanic mercenaries. As soon as they see blood instead of gold, they will turn their backs and run. And in some bad scenarios that may even cause other troops to lose their hearts and flee as well. Our Germanian levies, the Foederati infantry, closer to the city square, fought bravely, but the Frankish numbers were just too much. They could not sustain against that kind of a opposition. And Tancred's cavalry charge was enough to break them. Now the Franks only needed to be patient so that their troops could rest, and they had only enemy cavalry or our cavalry to deal with. And the foolhardy Foederati infantry was routed. Now it's up to the cavalry to win the battle, if they are able to do that. Heavy cavalry is never to be underestimated. They made a ferocious charge on the invading Franks. However, that was not enough, as the Roman general threw away his life, even though he managed to break 2 Levi spearmen units. However, the Roman general's bodyguard and the heavy Sarmatian auxiliaries were determined to fight to the last man in the defense of the city, even though the situation seemed to be hopeless. They were slaughtered one by continuous arrow fire or by the just massive horde of the enemy troops, and they could not win the battle. There were just too few of them, and they couldn't use their devastating charge as they were entangled with the Frankish horde. And to make matters worse, even Augusta Treverorum was burned. Surely the brutality of these Franks knows no bounds, and with the loot they gathered from the city, they were able to start training more troops to support their never-ending war against us. I hope that I'm able to send this letter to you somehow. I'm a bit afraid that these words will die with me someday here, and they can be of no use for you or for the emperor or any Roman general. But I will continue writing nonetheless. Perhaps by some miracle, perhaps God will grant us some miracle with which I can send these letters to you, even if I'm a prisoner for these pagans. Yours, Decimus Fabius.